right. Good morning. Good morning on this wonderful, gorgeous Friday morning. Welcome, everybody, to Wicklander Zalowski's Instructor Insights. I should say, at least it's a gorgeous morning where I'm at in the Midwest. I hope it's lovely where all of you are. I see we have some people joining us here. Good morning, Brian. All right. We this morning I am going to be talking to you about false confessions. I think we all know, those of us that are interviewers and those of us who will be interviewers, that it takes quite a bit of education and uh, practical learning to become effective and seasoned interviewers in obtaining, good information, articulable, actionable information for us. But we all must have some form of understanding, some working understanding about false confessions, and we must be self-aware and understand that during an interview, there are things that we as interviewers do that can walk a subject down the wrong road towards a false confession. Listen, we all understand we are always attempting to seek the truth, and again, actionable intelligence information that we can use in this case, in the case that we're working. But we have to recognize, we have to understand that false confessions have a devastating effect on the individual who gave the false confession, the victims of our crimes that we're investigating, in our community as a whole. False confessions, they are devastating. So this morning, that's what we're here to talk about. And every time that I instruct a class, it always stirs a lot of conversation about, how does someone false confess to something they didn't do? And, those on the outside looking into the interviewing world ask that question. And oftentimes those inside the interviewing world ask that question. So this morning, that's what we're going to try to talk about. We're going to try to cover some of those topics to find out how we put ourselves in a position to obtain a false confession. But even more importantly, what do we do to protect ourselves and protect the person that we are interviewing from providing a false confession to us? So we have the first thing we have to recognize is that false confessions fit into basically one of three categories. We have voluntary false confessions, we have coerced compliant false confessions, and we have coerced internalized false confessions. And all of our false confessions basically fit into one of those categories. Voluntary, as it says, it may happen without even having an interview or an interrogation. Subject may come forward and claim responsibility for something. It may be for a reason of notoriety or maybe to try to obtain some fame. It may also be to protect the actual individual who's involved in that incident or that crime. So somebody's protecting somebody else. Or it could be that they're trying to hide themselves from another crime they committed. So they're willing to admit to their involvement in a different crime to cover something up for maybe a higher level incident that they've been involved in. So we have voluntary false confessions. We also have coerced compliant. These come from the interviewer's suggestion of leniency, our removal of consequences. And by doing this, we say things, and I'm going to go to a high level one here, but it's something as simple as we might say in an interview, if you if you tell me what I want to hear, you can go home. And we know that that individual is probably not going home if it's a criminal case, or if it's in the private sector. If you tell me something, this isn't going to be a big deal, and it's not going to be a large situation, right? Yet this individual is accused of embezzling $100,000 or $200,000. It is a big deal. So we suggest leniency, we remove consequences, and that individual tries to escape the situation, right? They want out of the incident, they want out of the scenario. So they try to escape it. And generally, in coerced compliant, after an interview is done, they typically recant very quickly and say, listen, I admitted to my involvement in here, but I'm saying what you wanted me to hear. You might even hear terms as, investigator, if you say so, then yeah, I guess I did it. So we have to keep that in mind. And then the last category that we talk about is coerced internalized. We as interviewers, the individual gets this memory distrust, right? They believe they did it. We convince them of it, right? And how do we convince somebody of that? Well, quite often, unfortunately, it's our false evidence ploy, where we tell individuals that we have evidence against them when we don't. So their memory distrust, we put this false evidence ploy in, and we tell them we have their fingerprint, or we have video of them doing this or doing that. So they have this memory distrust. We put this false evidence ploy in them. And then when they can't remember the incident, we justify it for them. We tell them that there are reasons why sometimes you don't remember something, right? That maybe you have been consuming intoxicating substances, and you don't remember. Or when you do things, you have a tendency to black out. So we justify it. So all three of our our false confessions, they generally fit into one of those three categories. So what causes false confessions, right? What are the areas that how do individuals end up walking down this road? The first area that we as interviewers put ourselves in a bad situation was misclassification. What's misclassification? Sometimes it involves behavior. There have been many false confessions that involve interviewers who are looking at behavior, and they think that they're reading this behavior that tells them whether a subject is telling the truth or they're being deceptive. And we have discovered through the years that the use of behavior in determining if someone is innocent or guilty is not an effective tool in an interview and determining whether this subject's involved in our case. But unfortunately, for many years, interviewers use behavior to determine whether someone should or shouldn't be involved in a case, or is not involved in a case, I should say. Another area of misidentification is, another area of misclassification is misidentification. Unfortunately, out there are victims and witnesses who point us in the wrong direction. And they don't do so intentionally. At least generally, the majority of them do not. But they point us in the wrong direction. They identify the wrong person. So now we're going down a road because we believe that a witness or a victim has pointed us in a direction that this individual must be involved. Sometimes it's motive matches. We talk about motive matches, right? What are motive matches, right? Things that people get themselves involved in. This guy's been involved in this incident many times. He's got to be involved here. So we put them into that category. So misclassification, a concerning area for us on how we get into a false confession. Coercion, right? Coercion by definition, right? It's persuading someone to do something by force or threats, an area we cannot walk down at all. Threats or promises, right? And promises sometimes come out as simple as, we tell them they'll be okay. And, from my understanding and my position, you look like you'll be okay if we get through this, knowing that the individual's not going to be okay. They may lose their job. They may lose the reputation that they built because of the incident. They may go to jail. So We walk them down this road in coercion, and we know that we have to stay away from that. And then our third area where we get ourselves into some trick bag areas or some concerns when it comes to interviewing is contamination. And what's contamination? It's we provide facts to the case, to the individual inside of the interview. We provide this information throughout the course of the interview. So when we get to the end of the interview, basically what's occurring is this individual is just repeating the information that we've provided to them. So we contaminate them with this information. So we have the categories where people are in who give you false confessions. We have some areas how false confessions occur. But what are the areas that we as interviewers need to concern ourselves with and protect ourselves and protect the individual we're interviewing from walking down there? We have to be able to compare those known facts, right? We have to be able to recognize the known facts that we have inside of an interview. Inside of an investigation. And we compare those facts by the information the individual gives us in the room or during the interview. And when that information is not lining up, when you know factual information and it's not lining up with the information that this individual is providing you, it's the light bulb should go on. Something's of concern here. We may even want to consider maybe challenging a little bit of that information that we receive, right? Like maybe our individual, the incident they're involved in, the crime they may have been involved in, or the incident at maybe their job that they were involved in. And we know that the vehicle that was used was a white Chevy Tahoe, let's say. And let's say that we know it factually that it's a white Chevy Tahoe. And when we're interviewing them, it seems like they're not giving us the proper information. We're missing some things. Maybe we consider saying, hey, what type of vehicle did you use? Did you use a red Chevy Ford Explorer, knowing that that's not the right information? If they agree with you, the light bulb should be going off. Why are they agreeing with me when I'm not giving them the accurate information? I'm not giving them the factual information that I know is inside of this case. That's a concern for us. That's when we need to step back and recognize, is there something that I may have done throughout this interview? And what do I mean by that? That I may have released too much information inside of this interview, right? Did we release too many facts during the interview about the case? So if it's a 45-minute interview, we go back and we look at this interview. We look back and we think about this interview. Our partner talks to us about this interview, and we recognize that we introduced entirely too much evidence during this interview, that at the end, all they're doing, this individual, is repeating back the information that we've provided them. So we're really not getting any new known information. Obviously, we have to avoid any coercive tactics, including those false evidence ploys, threats or promises of leniency. We have to stay away from those areas. We have to make sure that we are not walking down those roads. We're not giving them that information of saying that, hey, everything's going to be okay here. Like, this really isn't that big of a deal. Again, when it is a big deal. So something that we just want to keep in mind. And lastly, something that I want you to consider is that, listen, electronic recording of interviews is an outstanding thing. It's an effective tool that investigators can use. And if you do so after the interview, you should rewatch that interview, and not to complete a report, which we know many of you will do that, but you're putting a critical eye on that interview, a critical eye in that, reviewing and evaluating how this process went. Did I avoid the pitfalls that walk individuals down the road of false confessions? Did I introduce too much information? Did I contaminate it? Did I make those promises in there? Did I suggest leniency? So we put that critical eye on that interview afterwards to see, is this a good, well-taken, obtaining actionable information from the individual, or did I provide too much during that? And so it's a great idea to go back and look over that that interview, it's a great idea to ask your partners to take a look at your interviews, to critique them from that perspective, to make sure we've not walked down a destructive road when it comes to interviewing. We want to make sure we are protecting ourselves, we're protecting the individual inside of the room, and protecting our communities and our companies in total. Listen, I gave you a lot of information here this morning on this wonderful Friday. I hope you took a little bit of information away. Remember, we as interviewers are always seeking the truth, striving the truth. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday and have much success in your interviewing, but always do interviewing and seeking the truth. Have a good day.